Good morning. This is meteorologist Drew Lerner of World Weather Incorporated. This is your world weather update here for Wednesday, August the 13th. Typhoon Podul he was moving into southern China as of an hour or two ago. You can see the center of the storm is still just along the coast, but it will be moving inland here in the next hour or two. And we expect to see the continuation of gradually increasing rainfall occurring across a big part of southern China, in particular Guangdong and parts of Fujian and then neighboring areas off to the north. The storm is still packing some impressive wind speeds of 75 miles per hour. It has been steadily weakening, and it did move across the southern portions of Taiwan overnight. The winds over land were about 85 miles per hour, but as it was approaching land, there was at least some wind gusts estimated upwards to around 110 miles per hour. Most of the heaviest convection is being sheared off to the southwest of the storm center, so the heaviest rains are likely to be in Guangdong today, and we will see anywhere from 4 to 8 inches, with some local totals getting up or over 10 inches possible. Storm system is moving at a fairly quick pace, and that will help to reduce some of the potential for excessive rains. Outside of that, the old tropical cyclone Henriette has dissipated as a tropical cyclone. It is a post-tropical cyclone now. It's still packing wind speeds of 45 miles per hour, but way over the open water of the Pacific in the middle of nowhere. So really not too much to get excited about. There's nothing going on off the west coast of Mexico as of this point in time. And over in the Atlantic side of the fence and in the Gulf of America, you can see that in the southwestern part of the Gulf, there is at least an area that's being watched by the National Hurricane Center, giving a little bit of a possible disturbance development potential there. At the moment, though, the clouds really don't look very impressive at all. And another little low pressure system down here off the Belize coast, and it has about a 20% chance of developing. This area actually is the center of circulation that will eventually work its way into the western parts of the Gulf of America. So we'll have to be watching that area for a while. And then there's Erin, and Erin continues to move at a fairly quick pace, about the speeds around 20 miles per hour. The sustained winds are 45 miles per hour at the center of the storm. You can see it's trying to get a little bit better organized, but it's still a fairly small and disorganized system. As we go forward through the next 24 hours, the storm will gradually intensify, reaching hurricane intensity here by Friday at about just shortly after midnight. And the system will then work its way still west-northwestward, steadily increasing speeds. Once it gets to the north of the northern Leeward Islands, it will become a hurricane, and it will most likely or I should say, become a moderate or major hurricane. And we'll see the wind speeds of 100 miles per hour here on Saturday, just after midnight. And then the most intense winds will likely occur as we get to Sunday morning. And the storm system will continue to intensify. Now, as of right now, the official forecast allows the storm to have a very slow turn to the north as time moves along. But a lot of the models are turning the storm to the north quicker than what the Hurricane Center is suggesting here. And if that does occur and it turns sharper to the north, then it might end up being a threat to Bermuda and less of a threat to the U.S. East Coast. But for right now, the Hurricane Center is taking its time in adjusting the path. There are a couple of other little disturbances worthy of noting, but they're not going to develop into anything. There's a system out here off the Nova Scotia coast, and then there will be a follow-up storm behind Erin that will come off the Africa coast as we go forward into the latter part of this week. It's all pretty disorganized out there right now, but there is a tropical wave that's coming off of Africa on Thursday going into Friday that will be the next tropical system possibly out that way. So let's move on back into the U.S. and step back a little bit, take a look at the big picture. A lot of clear skies in the western half to 2/3 of the country. Yeah, it is August, and we do have a lot of warmth out there that is going to accelerate drying across key U.S. crop areas. Not a lot of precipitation, though, today. Some showers in the southeastern states and mid-Atlantic region. A few thunder showers will pop up across the northern plains, and a little bit more up here across Canada's prairies, with Alberta getting most of the precipitation at this hour. There's still a lot of fires burning in the western United States and Canada, and that will continue. It looks like Canada will have the best chance of seeing some rain that might offer a little bit of relief. Taking a look at that upper air wind flow pattern, as it's in North America right now, not a lot has changed. We're just going to flip through this fairly quickly. There is a disturbance in Canada. That's the one we've just looked at. That'll move across the prairies as we go forward through the next couple of days. Another one behind it found here in the Gulf of Alaska. And we'll see a ridge of high pressure beginning to build up in the middle of the U.S. as we go forward into the end of this week and into the weekend. This high pressure ridge, as it builds up, will likely suppress rain in the central and southwestern parts of the corn and soybean belt, as well as parts of the Delta in the western Tennessee River Basin. But over time, the ridge is expected to get displaced back to the west. And as it moves to the west, there will be an opportunity for troughiness to begin to occur across the Midwest. This little trough here may set off a line of showers and thunderstorms that could not only bring some moisture into Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri that are going to be dry in this first 5 days of the forecast, but it may also bring rain to the Delta. And that's what some of the models are suggesting. I'm not totally convinced it's going to be real impressive, but there is a potential for some rain and thunderstorms to move through the lower eastern Midwest, the Delta, and the Tennessee River Basin as we move forward into the middle of next week. The ridge of high pressure, though, in the meantime, will be over the western United States and extending to the northern plains. A disturbance moving over the top of it, but the upper air support is not very good for deep convection, so we're not going to get a lot of rain out of that system. As we go ahead and move forward into the second weekend of the 2-week outlook, you can see that the ridge becomes flat-topped, still tilted a little bit northwest to southeast flow across the Midwest and the northern plains, meaning that there will be some cooler air coming into the eastern part of the United States, and then the showers and some thunderstorms will continue to occur, in this pattern. As we go forward into the last days of this model run, you'll see that the general formation of the upper air wind is still very much the same all the way out to the end of the model run. So once we get to the end of August, we're going to be looking at weak ridginess in the middle of the U.S., and storm systems will be moving over the top of it and bringing some rain periodically to parts of the northern plains, Canada's prairies, and the U.S. Midwest, while the central and southwestern plains are probably going to be drier biased. All right, let's take a look at the past weather here. A couple of things just to kind of note. I was playing around yesterday. I thought I'd share this with you today. I was playing around with the post-solar maximum years, and one of the things that I've always believed in, and you've heard me talk about this many times in the past, that the solar cycle tends to control the intensity of weather extremes occurring around the world, and we tend to see more weather extreme during the period from the solar minimum to the solar maximum. And during that time period, we usually see the most stressful conditions in crop areas around the world, and therefore the market trade tends to be more volatile. And there tends to be greater rises and falls in the futures market trades for corn and soybeans during those periods between the solar minimum and the solar maximum. And what this chart is showing you here is where the solar maximum, the period after the solar maximum has been reached. And you see the area between the red lines here is basically identifying those tendencies, those years between the solar maximum and the solar minimum tend to be a little bit more tranquil, less weather extreme. And there's a tendency for futures prices to stay in a relatively narrow range during those years. And just kind of wanted to point out the fact that we are entering another one of those time periods. The solar maximum was reached in August of last year. And so that's where we are with this green line here on the far right-hand side. And so we may be entering a period of some kind of a range-bound trading period for the next few years, where we don't see a tremendous amount of big-time appreciation in futures market prices. Of course, that's just based on weather. And there are exceptions. If you go back here and look into the period 2000 to 2005, there was a little bit more volatility showing up there. This is for the corn market. I did the same thing for soybeans. And probably the biggest thing that was different on the soybean chart is this same period between 2000 and 2005, where there was a pretty significant spike upward in prices, which did not occur in the other range-bound periods between the solar maximum and solar minimum. So we are just now moving into our second year after the solar maximum was reached. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to present this chart to you, just if you're curious at all about how weather and the marketplace might correlate together. If the past performance is anything like what may come in the future, we may not see a lot of dramatic market moves for a while. All right, yesterday's weather across the key U.S. crop areas was most concentrated in the eastern Midwest and parts of the southeastern states. Locally heavy rains around the Chattanooga area of Tennessee and picking up more than 6 inches of rain there, and some flooding resulted. And outside of that, though, really most of the weather wasn't too outrageous yesterday. Temperatures were seasonable across a big part of the Midwest, but still very warm to hot in the far western United States. Parts of the Pacific Northwest getting up over 100 degrees. The latest soil assessment showing the ground is firming up in parts of the eastern Midwest. We have pointed this out in the past, and I'm still very interested in this whole scenario here, but you can kind of see that the topsoil moisture is limited in a fair amount of this particular region inside the red line. So subsoil moisture, though, in most of that same region is okay, with the exception of the Delta, where we do have a short to slightly very short subsoil moisture profile in the Delta and the Western Tennessee River Basin area. So this pretty much identifies that region as having the greatest moisture shortage at this point in time. And the moisture field across the northwestern Corn Belt is best rated in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, portions of Iowa, northeastern Kansas, northern Missouri, and those areas have good top and subsoil moisture. So if you want something to watch over these next 2 or 3 weeks while soybeans are going through their reproductive and filling process, you probably want to watch the eastern Midwest, the Delta, and the Tennessee River Basin, as we've been suggesting here recently. It's still very dry off to the west, and obviously the southern plains are pretty dry. West Texas needs a drink of water, and there's not much in the pipeline for a little while. The Carolinas and Georgia and Florida are doing okay. In Canada, the moisture profile on the right-hand side of the chart here clearly shows that we're still looking at relatively good moisture conditions after last week's crazy amounts of rain that occurred in some locations. But there are areas that are firming up really quickly, and follow-up rain will still be needed soon. And it looks like in Mexico, we really haven't done anything to fix the moisture shortages that have resulted from limited rainfall since the middle of July. It has not been absolutely dry, except in parts of the northeast corner of Mexico. Those areas definitely have a bigger need for rain in irrigated fields than we have in the rest of Mexico. And the outlook will continue to keep the monsoon somewhat subdued there for a little while longer, but it will get a little more enhanced as time moves along. This is the 10-day European forecast models. And again, if you step back and look at this big picture, you've got to come to the conclusion there's really not a lot of problems out there, but the pockets of limited rain in Illinois and Indiana does raise a little bit of interest, since those areas already have a shorter moisture profile. And if we go through 10 days with limited rain like this and temperatures are seasonable, we're going to find the ground firms up more substantially. Let's take a look at the daily plotting of the rainfall across parts of the U.S. We'll take a look at the European model. We'll take this on a 24-hour daily basis so you can see how the rain is distributed. Let me get back to the beginning here. And I just want you to look at parts of the central Midwest as well as the Delta and Tennessee River Basin and try to see how often it rains. And you should see right away here that it doesn't rain very often at all. And we really don't get much precipitation to occur in the eastern and lower parts of the Midwest until we get out towards midweek next week. And at that time, we get a trough of low pressure that drops into the Delta in the lower Midwest and produces some rain. But these rain amounts are not all that impressive. And I think the potential is fairly good that we're going to have at least pockets that don't do well. And that may lead us into a drier weather concern in some of these areas. But the European model is a little wetter today than it was yesterday in the Delta and the Tennessee River Basin area. And so we do get scattered showers during a fair amount of next week into the following weekend. And so it's really hard to come up with a real serious moisture shortage problem in the U.S. Midwest, Delta or Southeast. But I still wouldn't be surprised to see the rains more limited in the Delta and the Western Tennessee River Basin, as well as parts of the Ohio River Valley. That's not necessarily an official forecast, but I would not be surprised to come in the next few days and see that some of this rain has been removed. This is the GEFS. That's the GFS ensemble. We look at this periodically. This is the week 1 outlook on rainfall. You can see that it has still above normal precipitation in the eastern Midwest. I still believe that this is overdone, and I think that we are going to see the model back off on this. The model is definitely wetter than the European model is in this first week of the outlook in Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. And I do believe that this has been overdone. So I would look for some reduction in precipitation in this region in future model runs. The wet weather in the northern Midwest, that makes sense. So the wet conditions in parts of the interior Southeast makes sense. The net drying in the Delta, the Central Plains, and the Southern Plains all make sense too. So I think that the outside of the eastern Midwest, I think this is not a bad forecast. In the second week forecast, notice that the GEFS is getting on board with what I've been trying to suggest for the past few days, and that is that less rain will occur in the eastern Midwest. And with temperatures seasonal, we are going to see some net drying conditions. So I think it's very important that we get the rain that's advertised in this first week of the outlook across Illinois, Indiana, and parts of Missouri down into the Delta. But I don't think you're going to see a lot of it. And I would not be surprised if we're talking about drier conditions just a few days from now. The northern plains and Canada's eastern prairies get some rain, and we get some rain in the middle Atlantic region, but everybody else is kind of normal to below normal on precipitation. And just as a quick reminder, let's go and take a look at a slide or two that I showed you earlier in the past couple of weeks. And that is this chart here. Actually, if we go back, I don't know if I've got the July in here. Yeah, there we go. So this is the July. You remember seeing this graphic where I showed you July precipitation for Canada and the U.S. on the left-hand side, and then what occurred in 1948, 1969, and 2002 on the right-hand side. There was a fairly good match between these two data sets. And so I wanted to see what August of 1948, 1969, and 2002 would look like. And that generated this graphic where there's a fair amount of the Midwest with below normal precipitation. And I told you as I presented that chart that it was too dry in parts of the upper Midwest, but I thought that the drier tendencies in the lower Midwest and some neighboring areas made some sense. The Delta is too wet on this composite. But I think that the reason why I wanted to point this out was just because there's a tendency here for the GFS to at least start reducing rain in the eastern Midwest for the second week of the outlook. And we may end up heading down a road where there's less moisture. But please don't expect this below normal precipitation in Wisconsin and Michigan to verify. That will not take place. There may be less rain, but there's not going to be that kind of reduction in moisture. So let's move on through the rest of the presentation here. So we've kind of talked about the U.S. This is the first week GFS operational 6Z model, and actually it's a 0Z model run. First week precipitation somewhat sporadic and light. Remember, the white areas are not dry. They are less than 0.4 of an inch. And the second week rainfall, still erratic rains across parts of the Midwest. So what I'm trying to suggest to you is that there is still some potential that we're going to have some lighter than usual rains in parts of the eastern Midwest as we move forward through these next couple of weeks, and making that 1948, 69, and 2002 composite imagery not so far off. So we'll keep a close eye. temperatures are going to be near to above normal over the next 5 days, but there is no extreme heat really coming up in any major crop area in the U.S. Canada's temperature is a little cooler than usual. And then we shift the heat out to the west. The ridge is going to be out to the west, so the warmest bias will be in the Rocky Mountains and Great Basin. The Midwest will see normal to slightly below normal temperatures, not only in the 6 to 10 day period, but in days 11 through 15 as well. So a period of moderate, moderate temperatures, I suppose, is going to take place, which will help conserve moisture. So even though we have the drier bias that's showing up in the model data in the second week, we don't have a lot of heat. So that will help to conserve the subsoil moisture and limit the amount of stress that crops endure. But we have to get all the way into early September for these soybeans to get through their most moisture-sensitive reproductive process. So the door is still open wide for a possible change in the conditions of crops if we don't get better rains and we end up with warmer bias conditions down the road. South America is really nothing much to talk about. It's all pretty status quo with what it has been recently. You can stop the slideshow and take a look at these in more detail if you want, but not much precipitation occurring in either Brazil or Argentina in this past weather. But notice the forecast here. We do still have rain coming up for almost all of Argentina, and the greatest precipitation will be in these western areas that have been dry for so long. If the forecast verifies, and it looks pretty good at the moment, we will see a nice improvement in topsoil moisture that should help to induce better wheat development as we get out into the week next week. In the meantime, safrinha corn and cotton harvest weather should be basically good. And temperatures in Brazil and Argentina be mostly in a seasonable range for a while this week. And then in the 6 to 10 day period, we'll see warmer than usual conditions developing across parts of Brazil briefly and some neighboring areas. But another shot of cooler air comes into Argentina following the bigger rain event next week and should bring down the temperatures and help maintain a good good level of conservation for the moisture that has fallen. So keep an eye on that. In Australia, not much precipitation yesterday, just a little bit in the southeast. You can see the moisture profile on the right-hand side. Still, we need more moisture to occur in Queensland and even parts of New South Wales. It's not a crisis, but it certainly is one that needs to be watched. We also expect a need here for South Australia precipitation to be on the rise as well. The forecast keeps most of the precipitation confined to the south coast. Western Australia will get the best moisture, and so will southern Victoria, but everybody else is going to dry out. Queensland and New South Wales, and it will have a higher need for rain as we get closer to late month, because that's when reproduction is likely to begin for some of the wheat and barley in Queensland, and that'll be the first area to reproduce into early September. In Europe, not much precipitation. It's still, the temperatures getting hotter. Temperatures in the 90s occurring up across southern parts of England and Wales. Yesterday, we saw temperatures in the 90s also in western Germany and northern France, while temperatures over 100 in southern France and a big part of Spain and Portugal. It's also fairly warm in southeastern Europe. You can see the moisture profile continues to show moisture shortages across quite a bit of southern and western sections of Europe. And these areas all need a good drink of water in order to get crops back on track for the best yield potentials. The next 7 days will be fairly dry across Europe. And then in days 8 through 10, we're going to have a chance for scattered showers, most of which what you're seeing here in the 10-day forecast map. The precipitation will be erratic, not generalized, and there will be pockets that are still quite dry all the way out through the 23rd of August. Temperatures are going to be way above normal over these next few days across Western and Central Europe, France in particular, and we'll see that continuing in the 6 to 10 day period, but gradually abating. And the ridge of high pressure is going to be breaking down. That should bring temperatures back to a seasonable range in days 11 through 15. And the former Soviet Union, precipitation fairly limited yesterday. We still have dryness in the south, southern and eastern parts of Ukraine, through most of Russia's southern region. This area does need a good drink of water. We are seeing some stress, and crop yield potentials are slipping lower. And you can see over the 10 days coming up, there's not much precipitation coming up. The temperatures in that part of the world are going to be mostly in a seasonable range, by the way. China yesterday, a little bit drier scenario playing out across east central areas, but you can see the east central areas got significant moisture recently to bolster the moisture profile. So having some dryness in this area right now is not a big deal. And China is really in pretty good shape overall and expected to stay that way. We will see some net drying occurring in east central sections of China for a little while as a tropical cyclone possibly comes up off the coast there and will help to limit the rain in interior parts of China. But for the most part, this whole scenario is not bad. And notice southeastern Asia, there's still plenty of moisture around. India is going to have some potential flooding coming up in central parts of the country, and we'll keep a close eye on that. And actually, let me go and get that forecast chart for you. For some reason, I've got that locked out, and we'll unlock it here, and you can clearly see the kind of rain that's advertised to occur across portions of central India as we go forward through the next 10 days. The majority of the precipitation will be concentrated on Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, and Telangana. And this region is going to be saturated before the greater rains kick in, and then the potential for flooding is going to be much greater than it has been in some of this region coming up. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right, outside of that, Southeast Asia is still getting some showers. The latest soil assessment still shows parts of central Thailand not doing that well with moisture. There's still some areas in Vietnam that could use greater rain, and some areas in Indonesia that need some greater rain. So none of this would be crisis, but there is a need for rain. And Philippines are in fairly good shape right now with little change likely. There is rain predicted for most of these areas as we go forward through the next 2 weeks. The bottom line should eventually be favorable for most of these crop areas. This is meteorologist Drew Lerner.